Goedenavond allemaal, hier zijn we weer met een nieuwe aflevering van Sinds, begon. Deze week, we zijn een beetje later, een paar minuutjes maar. Cameron had een klein beetje technische problemen en hiermee verraad ik natuurlijk ook al onze volgende gast, maar dat stond nog wel aangekondigd natuurlijk. Please welcome Cameron from Cadenhead. Hi Cameron.
Hi Gunther, how are you?
I'm fine. You just barely made it.
Yes, a few technical difficulties. Computer problems, technical difficulties, and broadband in Campbeltown is not the best. So I do apologise.
So you blame it on Campbeltown?
I blame everything on that. Bad internet, that's all I can say.
Okay. Back in the days. Something like that.
Pretty much, yes. There's a hamster turning the wheel here. That powers our internet. So,
yeah. Cameron, you just started working a few days ago.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we got back into work. Well, we're gradually bringing back some staff as well, because in March, obviously, when the pandemic started, the company took the decision, well, along with many other companies, to obviously stop production. So we had a government furlough scheme, as it's called. So they would pay a certain amount to the staff's wages, but luckily the company has actually paid everyone full wage for that time. So we're pretty much about 4 months off any kind of production, any bottling, just any kind of work. So it's been a strange time, but we're in a very fortunate situation that the company supported all the workers, and we're close to 90 staff. So I see Mr. Almeida's there.
Again. He's one of our regulars, so
yeah. So it has been a kind of strange few months, but now myself and a few others came back a few weeks ago, but it's mainly to start to get more planning done, because we are obviously 4 months behind to try and get everything back in schedule, to try and get the staff back safely as well. And then every week we've tried to integrate more staff back. So this week there's a lot more returning. So we've spent a lot of money trying to secure the offices with the bottling hall production. So there was a lot of safety procedures.
I found a photo of that. This is an example of what you're doing?
Yes, all the offices have got it as well. Well, our bottling hall, there's close to 20 people working in it. So it's a very tight environment. So we had to make sure to try and keep people as safe as possible. And part of that is we're doing split shifts as well, so that we don't have everyone in at one time. So we're trying to adjust to the new way of working. Like myself and obviously some others can work from home. Obviously, you can't take a bottling line back home with you. There's Mark there too.
Yeah.
The usual suspects, I think.
They all have been here before, so they know what's coming.
So it's been strange, but as I said, the company's been hugely supportive. So we are very fortunate. I know it's a struggle for a lot of companies just now. So now we're trying to get back on our feet, and in the next few weeks, the next coming months, we're hoping we're going to get bottling started and we can get orders out.
Yeah, but were you able to do something, or was it just it all stopped?
I mean, the whole thing stopped. There was a couple, like our director of sales, our director of production, and our MD, HR, and one of our secretaries. There was only 5 actual staff still on, but that was to basically maintain everything, to get the safety procedures in place, and then implement them as well. Part of the government furlough scheme was that you're actually not allowed to do any kind of work during that time.
Okay. Yeah.
So, even how much, like, a lot of the staff would say, well, can I do this? Can I help out? But as part of the scheme, you're not allowed to. So it was a very strange time.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, "Oh, it must be good being off for that time," but it wasn't.
I think everybody in the whole world has the same feeling. It's nice a couple of weeks, but then afterwards, it's like, let's just keep on going. Let's go to work. Let me do something.
It was. You started to get. It was really boring. Because you're not allowed out your house a lot of the time. You're only allowed out once a day for a walk. And it was the best weather we've had in decades. So it was oh, well, it's sunny outside, but I can't do anything. You know, so it was very, very strange times indeed.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to get back up and running.
Let's talk about something completely different. Everybody is talking about COVID, so let's talk about the other thing everybody's talking about. So
that's absolutely
you're
fine
working
with me.
for one of the biggest bottlers in the world. It's yours, it's not yours, but Cadenhead.
Unfortunately, it's not mine. Yes, so we are Scotland's oldest independent bottler, based in Campbeltown, with our sister companies Springbank Distillery and Glengyle Distillery, where Kilkerran is produced as well. There's Mr. Laurier's just appearing there. Good to see you too, Chris. So our owner, our chairman, Mr. Headley Wright, it was his great-great-grandfather that actually founded Springbank in 1828. Cadenheads didn't actually originate in Campbeltown, though. It was in the north of Scotland in Aberdeen in 1842. And it was a gentleman called George Duncan that actually started a wine and spirit merchant. He then introduced his brother-in-law. It was a gentleman called William Cadenhead into the business. Cadenhead was actually quite famous in the north of Scotland as well, because he was a famous poet. So it brought a bit of prestige as well to the company. Unfortunately, George Duncan died not long after this. Just to warn you, there's quite a few deaths in this story, but it's nearly 180 years old, so you're going to get one or two. So William Cadenhead renamed the company Cadenheads. And again, the company went from strength to strength until his unfortunate passing in 1904. Now, he had no heirs, which is another common theme to this story as well. So the business was left to his nephew, a gentleman called Robert Duthie. And Duthie took the company from strength to strength. He started doing things which are nowadays, it's common, like more marketing, where they would advertise in theatres or on buses, at the back of buses, and started to do slogans and a bit more blending of the single malts. We were probably more famous for the single malts and even the Demerara rum at that time in the north of Scotland. Obviously, with the Navy too, like the rum scene was huge at that point. Now, the depression in the 1930s sort of really hit the whisky industry, and obviously with Cadenheads too. So Robert Duthie was on his way to see the bank manager, where he was run over by a tram in Aberdeen, and unfortunately killed him. Now, I don't think there was too many high-speed trams in Aberdeen at the time.
Just the one.
Just the one. I always kind of thought it was silly how somebody could get run over by a tram, until the first time I visited The Hague, and I think in the Netherlands, and I was nearly run over by about 10 trams in one night. So I can meet. Sorry. Yes. So he again had no heirs. So the business was left to his two sisters. They had no experience in the kind of spirit industry, but they wanted to continue the name of Cadenheads. So they left the running and the operation of the business to a lady who'd been working with the company for many years, a woman called Anne Oliver. So she took the business from strength to strength, and so Cadenhead continued its progression. But one of her strengths and faults was that she was very stubborn. So she didn't like change too much, which can help in some ways, but when you don't go with the times, Cadenhead started to fall back a bit. And they had a huge amount of stock in the warehouses, but no idea what to do with it. So in 1972, basically the shareholders, etc., decided, look, we need to sell the business. So they went to Christie's auction house in London, where there was a fire sale of majority of the stock. And at the time, it was the largest sale of wines and spirits that the UK had seen up until that point. So once they'd made enough money to clear their debt and basically have a bit more left over, they decided to sell the business. And that's where Headley Wright purchased the company. So in 1972, the owner of Springbank purchased Cadenheads, and we've been based in Campbeltown since then. So that's the story of Cadenhead, really.
Yeah. So it traveled. So it moved to Campbeltown, and
Yes,
at that point, it was estranged with Springbank, of course.
Yes, it made a lot of sense as well. All the way, eventually, it didn't just happen overnight, but eventually, you know, like the stock could get moved to the warehouses at Springbank. Obviously, with the bottling line coming at Springbank as well, we could do their own bottling eventually too. So it made more sense to bring everything into one.
But I never been there. So is Cadenhead, is it located in the distillery, or is it just nearby or on site?
We've got the way that Cadenhead works. We've actually got many shops. We've got franchise shops around Europe. So the one in Campbeltown is actually owned by the company. That's the one in Edinburgh there, I think.
Yeah.
So that was the first franchise shop that I think that was over 30 years ago now. So the one in Campbeltown is the one that the company owns, and our offices are based just above the shop, but all our stock is at the well, not all of the stock, sorry, but we try and keep most of the casks at the warehouses with the Springbank and Glengyle stock as well. Now, we're obviously purchasing casks all the time, so we don't have all the stock in Campbeltown at one time, but we're trying to do that. We've actually built new warehousing recently, which should be finalised very shortly. So we're trying to get as much stock to Campbeltown as possible, which means that we can keep an eye on it more. Means more cask samples too.
So if I'm correct, so Springbank and the other distilleries joined you, but Cadenhead and Springbank are one on the same.
We're under the same umbrella. Like we're owned by the same company, but we run as three separate entities. Well, the Springbank team do Springbank and the Kilkerran whisky, and like, I just solely, like myself and the Cadenheads team, you know, we just do Cadenheads. So we're under the same ownership, but we run as three separate companies.
Okay, that's clear. But obviously, you didn't join the business in the 70s. So you joined in 2015.
As much as I might look a bit older, I wasn't born in the 70s.
I
wasn't too far off it, but not quite. Early 80s, we'll say. That's the. So I joined in 2015, but I actually didn't have a background in whiskey. When I was younger, I was one of these people who didn't really know what they wanted to do. So after I left school, I went to Glasgow in about 2002, and I studied electronic engineering, well, for a couple of years, which, as you can tell, really helped my career. But I didn't enjoy it too much. So I decided to come back home. It was only meant to be for a short time. So I moved back to Campbeltown and worked for my family business. So my father and my uncle have a butcher and a bakery factory. So they employ around about 50 people in the area too. And they source for the kind of west of Scotland as well. So I came back and worked there it was meant to be just 6 months, but I ended up there for quite a few years. And then I moved to local government, where I worked in procurement and commissioning. Then after a few years, which I really enjoyed at the time, all the jobs I really enjoyed, but near the end of the time, working for the local government, I wasn't quite enjoying it as much. And one of my friends works with Springbank. He's actually my boss now, so he's a good boss, just in case he's watching. He sort of knew that I was maybe looking for a change of career, and he came to me saying, "Look, I don't know what you want to do, but there's a position coming up in our Cadenhead shop in Campbeltown." He says it'll be a completely different career path. You know, I don't know what your situation is, where you might enjoy it. His wording actually was, "You like alcohol and you can speak a lot of rubbish, so you might be good for the job." He didn't. He said a worse word than rubbish, but well, it's a clean show, so we won't go there.
Cameron, I have a question for you from Manu. Generally speaking, is a positive or negative to be a bottling and offering stuff from distilleries that have no or very few official bottlings, like say Miltendorf, as in you could be filling a gap, but at the same time, perhaps those whiskies aren't that well known.
To be honest with you, it could work both ways. The positive side of it is that you get to bottle whiskies that nobody gets to try, and there is an attractiveness to it. Obviously, as long as it's a quality product you're putting out. The negative side is that it might be harder to, as a selling point. You know, it might be if somebody's never heard of, say, an Othrask or Balmenic, maybe some of the lesser known distilleries. That's nothing against very good distilleries, but maybe not as well known. You know, when everybody thinks, they'll say Ardbeg or Highland Park, Laphroaig. But majority of whiskey in Scotland are probably not as marketed. So that is part of the task we've got to do. I don't see it as a positive or a negative. It can work both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, we've talked about this before in our job. Sometimes it's actually easier to bottle a lesser known distillery.
Yeah.
Because say you've got a distillery that not many people know, you know, the expectation of it being amazing, you know, nobody's expecting anything. So then if they try it and they really like it, they're like, wow, that's really good.
Chris is saying, I think a big positive is the fact that you can get to know these obscure distilleries, and to know ones is a different way.
Well, in that as well, you look at how many distilleries over the years have became popular because of independent bottlers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously, it's before my time, but I've heard a lot of people who've been in industry, like especially working with independent bottlers. In the 1960s, you know, the Ardbeg couldn't give away casks. No, nobody wanted it.
Yeah,
I'm
curious about that because a few weeks ago I had a guest and he was saying something similar, and I'm asking him to join us. So here is Chris himself. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hello, Cameron. It's good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been.
Yeah,
I was hoping to get there next month, but unfortunately,
it's
not going to look like it.
I know. But you know, Cadenhead is never far away, so I took some photos with me. Still one of my favorites, as you know. So
I'm very surprised you've still got that one.
Well, I bought a lot of stock of that one. So
he's the one guy who bought all of it.
Cheers, Chris.
Pretty much I did actually, because I got to know this one thanks to Cameron, which was one evening, and when we discovered this one in the warehouse, when we got a taste of this, I was flabbergasted because of the fact that it's such a special thing, and that's what I was just saying, commenting on. That's the nice thing, you can get to know a distillery in a totally different way as well, because of the fact that they tend to put the spirit in a quite a different cask or whatever. And well, if you get a distillery that's always known for its sherry matured whiskies, thanks to an independent bottler, you get your chance of trying the same spirit but matured in a bourbon cask, for instance. That's something that's fantastic. I really love those kind of things.
And it makes a big difference. Just something different now.
That's Kelvin as well. Good to see you, Kelvin.
Yeah, he says, hello from Melbourne. Definitely a big positive to be able to taste many single malts that were never sold as single malts through the independent bottlings.
Yeah.
And again, I think though, because of it too, it does, you know, the people become more, you know, they start to become more popular. And if they get more of a name, the distilleries themselves will then, generally most of them will be owned by a conglomerate. You know, so they might go, well, this is getting quite popular. They might do a special releasing or eventually do it as a single malt. So it can actually be against us, because if they then start to get popular, it then becomes harder for us to get the casks as well.
Yeah.
So it can work both ways. But as Chris was saying there about you get to try different casks that you might not see from a distillery. I remember doing a tasting many years ago, and there was we did a Glendronach in a bourbon cask, and actually one of the guys stood up and says, "That's not Glendronach." I was like, "No, yeah, it is." He says, "I was there. They told me they only do it in sherry cask." This was a bourbon cask that they sold us, you know, many years ago, and he wouldn't believe me. we've had bourbon cask, Macallan, bourbon cask Glenfarclas, things that you don't normally see. They're more associated with the sherry style. But people still don't believe me.
Definitely something to recommend if you get your hands on a bourbon cask matured Glenfarclas. Always a joy to try it because it's so very, very different. And well, you don't immediately recognize it as being a Glenfarclas, but wow, it can be so many good flavors, so many good fruity things in there. So yeah.
Benny is mentioning the Belmont.
Yeah, thanks, Benny.
Springbank, a good example of that.
They don't even give us any. So well, that's a lie. We get one cask a year of Springbank, Longrow, Hazelburn, and Kilkerran. But so don't feel bad if they don't give anyone else any casks. We're the same company basically, and we don't get any from them.
Well, Cameron. To be honest, this is actually a bit I've had left, but I was thinking, what bottle can I put next to me just to join in a dram with Cameron this evening? And well, it came pretty close because I almost took a Glen Scotia out. So
that's nothing wrong with that. We're actually releasing a new one pretty shortly.
All right,
a new Glen Scotia coming out, 28-year-old, coming out pretty shortly. So I don't know if I should have actually told that yet. So maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Maybe a cask coming out.
There might be, maybe not. But no, that's the good thing about working for an independent bottler is that you've got to support every distillery.
Can I ask, amongst all those distilleries, what are your favorites? Because that's the thing that you're telling. A lot of distillery managers or people that work for a distillery, if you ask them what's your favorite dram, they will always pick one of the whiskies from the range of their own distillery.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not allowed to say another name, I don't know. But in your case, what is your favorite dram? What's your favorite distillery? Well, if I'm allowed, because
I'm very honest. At Springbank, well, obviously Springbank is one of my favourites, but to go on other ones, Glentalkers. I've always really liked Glentalkers, especially a second or third fill bourbon cask left for about 20 to 30 years. Sometimes I get blasé because you've got to try these over the time, but it's also got that nice sweetness to it as well. The kind of the fruit is a lot of body behind it. Again, very underrated. Melton Duff, old Glengarry's as well.
Okay,
that you can get. Some of the newer ones too. We actually had a sample of quite an old Arran recently. I'll say old. It's only 20. The distillery is only 25 years old, but it was absolutely stunning. Beautiful stuff. So there's always something you can find. I don't like to be pigeonholed into saying that one distillery is better than the other because I've tried some beauties. In fact, one of the surprising ones this year, I don't mean surprising, but because we were doing we were tasting samples for a new release, and in the same release we had a 27-year-old Ardbeg. We had I think we'd a Dufton and PX sherry, whatever. And there was a 13-year-old Macduff in a bourbon barrel. It was stunning. It was absolutely beautiful. Really fruity, fresh. And it was for 13 years old as well. It was only about 46.5%. And it was just, it was gorgeous. Managed to get a couple of bottles of that for myself though. So that's obviously paid for, just in case anybody's watching.
Yeah, okay.
But so it can surprise you with, not because Macduff is an excellent distillery. It's just that when you're doing it, sometimes you get surprised because you get maybe complacent because you're dealing with what's supposedly going to be the more superior whiskies beside it. But it was a standout, and the whole team were like, "Wow, that's tremendous."
Okay, Olivier is asking a question about this one. Is it coincidence that your release of recent past, both authentic and small batch single cask releases, seem to focus on bourbon maturation instead of sherry maturation, as a lot of other independent blotters are trying to score it? Or is it that a clear choice you make during a selection? I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of casks, we're dealing with thousands of different casks as well, from lots of different distilleries. The distilleries nowadays are going to mainly sell you, maybe second or third fill bourbon. They're not going to put out their good sherry unless you maybe get a direct contact. But the vast bulk of casks will be ex-bourbon casks. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because my preference is actually bourbon cask matured over a long time. But because of the majority of the stock, the majority of the releases will be like that too. But we do a lot of re-racking of casks. In fact, over the last sort of 2 years especially, we've put a lot of different casks into different cask types, like PX, Amontillado, Oloroso, different rums, wine casks, even just fresh bourbon sometimes, because it can be. What one have you got there? Is that the Milton Duff rum?
No, it's a Mortlach.
It's a Mortlach rum. So it can be that way. There's also, we won't just change a cask for the sake of changing it. You know, when you're dealing with so many, it's difficult for an independent bottler to. You're either going to deal with a single cask, or you're going to have a vatting of maybe 4 to 8 casks, maybe a bit more. That's still very little. Not every cask is going to be perfect. It's the same way. I mean, distilleries that bottle, the likes of Springbank, if they do a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old, they're not checking every single cask because it's going to be a larger vatting. But when we're dealing with small amounts, every cask really does matter quite a bit. So we have to make sure. And some of the casks, sometimes it can just be slightly off. So it's not that the spirit, but sometimes the wood's just not great. So you have to take that decision. Are you going to leave it for another 10, 15 years and risk it? But if the wood after 8 to 13 years has done nothing to it, then there's no point keeping it in there, because it's not enhancing it at all. So you need to then make an effort to change. And we do quite a big re-racking program as well. But it's not just a case of sherry, rums, wines. It can just be putting it into fresh bourbon again, just to reinvigorate it, trying to give it some new life. Actually,
this Kilkerran I showed you earlier, that was actually initially matured in port cask, but you re-racked in a bourbon cask. But that's quite unusual. We don't see that a lot. So I've seen a Deanston once, which was finished in a bourbon cask again. So how do you get to that idea? Because not a lot of bottlers are doing this actually.
Well, we can't actually take too much credit for that one. That's the Springbank guys, or the Glengyle guys that did that one. That was from the original, the first distillation of Kilkerran in 2004. And they did a set release where they put some in port, some in Madeira, bourbon. I can't even remember the other ones that they put in.
So there's some liquid lift.
I don't think there's much, and I don't think, as much as I've tried, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get it from them. But that one, basically, that cask, I think after 10 years they tried it. It tasted really good, but it just was too heavily poured. Mm-hmm. So what they tried to do was a reverse maturation.
Okay, so to tone it down again.
Basically to try and tone it down again. So put it back in a bourbon cask. And I wish I actually had a sample of like the two together to show you the difference. In fact, I wish I had a sample of one of them, actually, to be honest.
Well, one can be arranged if you like. So
I had plenty of it before. I've had my fair share enough, but thanks, Chris. I had
He has been in
just
lockdown.
Basically, I've had to restock quite a bit since went into lockdown. So it basically just sort of took it back a bit. It didn't, because you couldn't really get much Kilkerran from it. It could have been anything in port. Mm-hmm. It could have been just the port, but it tasted really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a whiskey, it was maybe not what the style they were looking for to showcase Kilkerran at the time. And I think that one there, the one that Chris has got, it does bring it back a bit, and it's quite an unusual flavour from it, something. But you start to get more of the whiskey character behind it again with the reverse maturation.
Mm-hmm. Another question from another viewer. Paul is asking, are there still Campbeltow casks in the warehouse?
Yes.
Actually, it's Chris asking, but he does another recommendation.
To be honest, I was actually thinking the same thing, actually. So
there's when it comes to the closed distilleries, there's never an ending. You don't have a never-ending supply anymore, unfortunately. So we still do have quite a few closed distillery casks in the warehouses. We have to really keep it, you have to utilize them though, and make sure to look after them. Because again, just because it's closed, we had to taste them and go, you know what, that made these change that cask. You've remembered the one we put in sherry for a couple of years, Chris.
Yeah.
I think you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Still have some bottles left.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure you had some of that. So there's no point, as part of like our ethos is that it's not just, it's got to be quality as well. We're not going to bottle something just because of the name.
Mm-hmm.
Now we bottle so much over the year, you're not going to love every single one of the bottlings we do, but we want to make sure that it at least has got good quality that would make you want, or that somebody would really like it. We're not just going to bottle it because it's a Campbeltow or because it's a Little Mill. It's got to still be good enough to drink.
And what about foreign distilleries? Because I know you did a Paul John, you did a McMira as well.
Yeah, we've did Paul John, McMira, obviously with Irish over the years, we've done Cooley. What other world whiskies have we done recently? There is another one I can't say. I nearly said it there.
Nobody's watching. It's just Chris and me.
Yeah.
It'll be the first time we've done one from this country. I can't really say much more than that just now, or I'm going to get absolutely destroyed in the morning. And even today, I was speaking to I don't want to name it, but I was speaking to another person from obviously a foreign distillery as well. So we're always looking to do that for our world whiskey range. I've done American bourbons, of course, in the past. Australian whiskey as well. We've done. I'm sure we've done something else, but the Paul John ones, they've been absolutely tremendous, and we've still got a Paul John in the warehouse that we actually put into sherry. I think about 2 or 3 years ago. So it's maturing nicely in there.
Will it be in the warehouse tasting soon?
So Olivier's going to say what it is, because club members got a mail today.
Yep.
All right, so they'll know then. They'll know which one I'm talking about.
Yep.
But I've got to be fair, because we've got the Cadenhead Club. So part of the club is that you get to know which the new releases are before the general public do. It makes it fair for people who support us and who are members of the club, that they get the first chance. It is very difficult when you're dealing with a single cask, and especially this one coming up, where you might only have 200 bottles.
Yeah.
And we've got over 1,000 members nowadays, so it's some people will be unhappy. Unfortunately,
so it's kind of looking like Fight Club.
That's what we might have to change the name to, I think. Then.
Chris,
there's only one rule about it, though.
Chris, you're a member as well?
I'm a member as well, but I'm not going to say either. So I'll leave the honor to Cameron.
You know why I'm not saying now, Chris, then?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's another one in the mail, which I'm even more interested in. So, yeah.
The release, again, even though that's one, there's another 7 in the release, which should equally, well, not, that one will get more hype, but there's other ones that are equally brilliant whiskies as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Again, I'm probably the worst guest to have right now, because I can't tell you about what we released today. I can't tell you for our next release, because we've still got to notify our customers and importers about it first. We've had so many delays. We've had a range that's meant to be released, April time. And when we came back, obviously not everything was finalized. We had to wait on labeling and the packaging to come in, and obviously printing companies and packaging companies, there's a knock-on effect with everything, that they're delayed as well. So it takes a bit of time just to get everything in there. And even then, we're still waiting on some casks to come in too. I think we're waiting on a delivery of about 100 casks nearly before lockdown to come into our new warehouse. So I'm eagerly awaiting those to come in. So we'll need to check them all.
I have a question, if I still can, of course, because
of course
I don't want to take over or something. I'm not
No,
Mark.
that's Mark's job.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. No, but I know you've released some amazing blends as well so far. But how do you do the selection of those blends? Do you really select the casks to be used for the blend? Or is it that when you come up for a cask to be bottled as a single cask or as a small batch, and you say, well, we're not going to do it, we're going to use it for a blend or whatever? How is that selection made? Because some of them are quite aged. There's quite some aged stuff in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to kind of look at it a few ways too. We've got to look at it on what stock have we got there that would be suitable for a blend. You know, you need to look at some of the aged stuff we've maybe had plentiful stock of. The cost has also got to what you've got to factor in. There's no point us putting a blend out where you're actually losing money on it, or so you've got to factor everything into consideration for that. We've got a couple of new blend ranges coming up as well, which again I can't really tell you too much just now. So we've got a couple of new ranges coming up, and so we've obviously got some blending process on the way. We're probably going to have to do a bit more it will be a case of we're a bit behind with it just now, but it'll be trial and error with certain casks. And even sometimes you might just use part of a cask, and then you might have to then use different parts here. Like we want to try. You need to get a bit of consistency sometimes as well. Even though it'll never be exactly the same with each batch, you still need to have a little bit of consistency. So there's no point as doing, for instance, a mega sherried blend, and then only 3 releases later, it's going to be totally bourbon. We should have it kind of as close to possible, because it does confuse a lot of people. Somebody like yourself, Chris, you know exactly how well it kind of works. But if you're trying to sell it across the world, it's not as easy to. Yeah. People are looking at the consistency, go, why is this different now? Is it not as good? Is it not? Whereas each time it should be as good, if not better.
Well, one of the things you've already done was you put out a blend. And then apparently from what's left over, you put it back in another cask to do finish. And so that's always nice, because then you can see what a cask can do with a whiskey within a year, for instance. And it's always nice in the comparison.
That was the 12-year-old.
44-year-old you once did. That was amazing to try to see what difference it makes just 1 year in a certain cask.
Well, the 45-year-old, again, that was from the 43-year-old, which you also had a bottle of, if I remember right, and a box. I actually remember you finishing it one night at the Havana Club. We won't go there.
Wow, please do.
That was at Spa a few years ago, I think.
Yeah, so. Indeed, it was last year in Spa.
It was with that one we had an Invergordon. It was a Glenfarclas and a Glenlivet, and together, each one probably, the Invergordon was probably the strongest as a single cask. I believe you actually may have tried the single cask components when you visited. Yeah,
individual samples as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other two were good, but as a blend, it was just fantastic. You've got 44-year-old Invergordon, 46-year-old Glenfarclas, and 45-year-old Glenlivet. It's pretty good components to have. So the basis is there. But again, age doesn't mean anything. Sometimes distillery name doesn't mean anything. But this one really did work. But the only way that you would really probably do that now is if it needed that extra blend. If it had a 45-year-old Glenlivet now, you might go, ooh. If it tasted good for a single cask, you would go, yeah, that would go into a single cask.
Or you do it because you can.
Well, that's the other thing as well. We've got a bit of freedom. Yeah. As you've probably heard from other people who work for independent companies, we don't have shareholders, to bear down our necks looking for pushy targets, because they might go, yeah, we need this amount. So therefore, all the stock we talked about earlier on, the closed distilleries, some of the big name distilleries, which are harder to come by, you'd have to just go, right, that's it, gone. But we're very lucky that we can actually sort of look after them and then bottle them when we see it's right.
Is that because, as I said, is that because you Cadenhead, or is it just because some other independent blotters can do that? If they do it, they would be stuck with a lot of whiskey and instead of when Cadenhead is coming out with a new whiskey, everybody wants it.
Well, again, when you've got a bit of history, the prestige behind it, and then the company's been run so well over the years, you know, that, I mean, for instance, what I talked about earlier on, you know, we could run the company well enough over the years that allowed us to then pay the staff for 4 months. You know, we've been buying stock over the furlough period, over the lockdown period. We've got to continue to invest within the company. You know, so there's also, when you look at some independent bottlers, like you've got some really great ones, you've got some really huge ones. So it depends on what kind of stock levels you've got as well. We're very fortunate is that some independent bottlers, I mean, I spoke about we're getting 100 casks delivered. You know, some bottlers might not have 100 casks.
No.
You know, that's just ones that we've got and we've had stored about that we're just taking from a warehouse. We've got many others that are in other warehouses that would love to get into Campbeltown. That's just one delivery coming in. Yeah. So we've got enough stock. We're in a very fortunate position that we can maybe play about a bit with stock as well. Okay. But as long as we're doing it in a sensible way, of course.
Chris asked you a question, and I'm going to ask the same question to Chris, actually. Chris, what's your favorite bottling so far?
Well...
You can show them all on the right side.
I've had a few. You mean from Cadenhead, you mean?
Yeah, of course.
Well, a couple of years ago, we were there in the warehouse, and there was an Ardmore, a 3-year-old Ardmore, available over there. I was quite amazed to try it. The 3-year-old, which was so rich, I was expecting to have something with not much flavor, but a lot of smoke. But it was the other way around. It was very rich. It was very intense, and I think it was an excellent proof that whiskey doesn't need to be aged to 30 years or longer to be really good. That was 3 years old. It was fantastic. I kind of remember an Okontoshan, which was in a wine cask once.
The Chateau Lafite cask.
Yeah, my God, that was so special. It was really, really different. But I like those kind of experiments. That's why I'm quite a Mortlach fan as well. But this is Mortlach in a rum cask, which makes it a very, let's say, a very strange Mortlach, but that's nice. I like it because it shows how important casks can be and what they do to develop all the flavors in the whiskey. And that's why I like these experiments as well. That's why I really enjoy independent bottlers who are able to experiment a bit, even with the blends and so on as well. So because sometimes, as Cameron was saying, it's not affordable to mix this whiskey with that whiskey or that cask and select that cask to just mix it with something else. But well, it wasn't me, Menno. But if you're able to do it, well, sometimes the experiment turns out to be something you didn't expect, and that can be a wonderful thing. So yeah.
Well, that's it. And even some of the creations we had in the past our old distillery manager, Frank McCarthy, I think, did some of the vattings. And it's the ABC one we talk about. It was Ardbeg, Bowmore, and Kalila, which nowadays we're like, no, don't do that. But at the time, it was a different period, you know. Independent, especially back then, that would have probably been 15 years ago that he probably did that. And the whiskey industry has changed a lot in that time as well. And independent bottlers too. There is more exposure nowadays. You know, they are becoming. It is a bigger style. So when you're talking about, you know, we've got a lot of these casks. It's because there is a bigger market to get to as well. You know, so you will see different ranges. You know, it's not just something. It's not just a secret anymore.
Okay, Chris, do you have any more questions you want to ask? No, then I will leave.
No, I was dropped in here quite unexpectedly, but I really enjoyed it. It was very nice having a chat. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Chris.
Just so you know, Chris has a story from Wiltura. I don't know if you know Wiltura. Probably not. He told me a while ago, and it keeps on following him. So, Chris, I don't show the photo today.
Well, you the one you sent me, you mean? Well, no problem. But yeah, well, actually, Wiltura is one of our most famous Flemish singers here in Belgium.
Okay.
And people ask me, what was your first whiskey you've ever had in your life? Well, it was actually, my first whiskey I've ever had was half a bottle of Johnny Walker, which we stole from that particular singer when I was 13 years old. So
Yeah, and he told me not a good idea.
not when you're 12 years old. No, that wasn't a good idea.
No, it didn't taste as good when you're young.
No.
No, Chris, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you very much, and Cameron.
Thanks, Chris. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, same here. Hope to be in Campbeltown as soon as possible now.
So stay safe.
Bye
bye. So, Cameron, we're all alone now with all the viewers. So I have another question for you. It's from Olivier again. So Cameron, who's the selection committee for new releases? And are there bottlings how are they chosen, or are the people with vetoes?
No, we've got basically our selection team. It's myself, my colleague Jenna McIntosh, who's a sales executive for Cadenheads, Mitch Graham as well, another sales member of Cadenheads, our director of sales and marketing for Springbank and Cadenheads in Glengyle, Ronald Watson, and our production director Finlay Ross. So there's 5 of us that are the kind of main tasting panel. So we're based. It makes pretty good sense. It means you can get 5 opinions, because sometimes you can go, this is really good. You know, you think one day, but something just might be. Somebody else goes, there's something not right with this. So you might go back to it the next day and go, actually, do you know what? You're spot on. So it has been quite good. It means you can go back and forth and get different opinions from different people too. So there's no secret. It is, we're part of that. And the good thing about that is that our job is we do it from start. I accept bribes, Chris. You're fine with that, yeah? I'll take cold hard cash. But the good thing about our job as well is that we do from start to finish. You know, we're part of the helping source casks, the selection team. We do all the tasting notes. You get all part of the kind of helping with the packaging. We do all the sales and marketing. You do every single part of the process. Well, we don't do the bottling, but that's the bottling hall guys will do that. But we're involved from the very beginning to the end. So we are you're doing the selections, the ambassador role, if you will, because we don't have certain staff to do that. It's a case of when we send out one of our staff members to a country or to do a tasting, they'll know pretty much the origins from that bottling. Yeah. So they're not having to read a memo, or they're not having to just say what they're meant to be told. So that's a pretty good part of the job as well. It makes it a lot busier, and it is quite a lot of work, but it is good to be involved with every part of the process.
Yeah. So you're involved from the beginning. But you spend a lot of time in the warehouse as well, I presume.
At the moment, no, we're not allowed in the warehouse. In fact, the guys are. I got some samples drawn to go for new releases that we're going to be picking. So I got 50 new cask samples delivered to my door just 2 days ago. Well, this last week, sorry. So I'll need to have a bit of research through those. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
Tough job. Yeah.
So you visit the warehouse only with visitors?
With visitors, yes. And we'll do tastings as well.
Okay.
It's become
so much. I found a few photos of you, and it's all in the warehouse, but apparently it's not always like this.
It's not always like that, yeah. Although I'm finding it very hard to say it's not when you're seeing a lot of pictures like that. But nowadays as well, with your role evolving too, we've got a team as well that can do tastings, because a warehouse tasting, you could have 2 or 3 a day. The time you finish them, you've got to get the rest of your work done as well. So we'll still do tastings and traveling as well, but it is very. We'll still go now and then, but it's maybe not as much as I used to do. There's Robert there.
Yeah, Robert is asking, do you think it would be a good idea to include a club member from time to time?
I take it that's for the tasting panel.
Yeah.
That he's talking about. I'll think about that one.
And then there's Manos. It's actually about Chris. Chris either marries someone from Cadenhead or get adopted by them. They seem to have a problem with their hairs over there. And then there's Chris again. The warehouse tastings are highly recommended.
Thanks, Chris.
So, and they're well. They're happy today.
After the fifth tour, the vase comes. Usually, sometimes the first tour of the day. But no, it's a great experience as well. You know, like a lot of people, you don't normally get to try whiskey in that environment, and it's not the warehouse we do it in. It's one of our old Dunwich warehouses, and we've not. It's not a very cleaned up environment. It's mouldy. It's damp. It's wet. That's the natural state of the old warehouse. It's many years old. So we've not put it in some fancy area, you know, just to do it as a tasting area. Yeah. It's a pretty disgusting place actually, but it's more authentic. You know, it gives you it's more authentic to do it there, and there is something nice about drinking whiskey in that area too.
You were mentioning before in 2015 you started as assistant manager. Then
I actually started as a sales assistant in the shop, and then not long after I went to the assistant manager. I think I must have left that one out when
you left that one out. Not good. Not good.
That was my fault, that one.
But then again, you started as sales executive in 2017, and then it went fast from the beginning on. But then in 2018, you started as regional sales manager. In 2020, overall sales manager. You did good.
I did pretty good there, I think. Yeah, they've not found me out yet. So
you were the only one who wants to do it.
I'm not too sure. I'm getting kind of worried how there's such a progression there. But no, for myself, I went in and I really wanted to learn more. You know, we all work pretty hard as well. So it is, you know, it's quite a tiring job, but it's a pretty fun job as well. You know, there's a lot worse things in the world to do. But I really enjoyed it, loved it. You show a bit of commitment, and the company likes to promote from within as well. So they're always like trying to they want progression, and we try and do that all throughout the company as well. So it's a great place to work. And as I said, they've not worked me out yet. So I'll be the managing director in the next 2 years.
Global manager in 2020. It sounded great in February. It's now different. Normally you would come to Spirits in the Sky in November. Yeah. You have been for many years. So this was last year.
That was last year. Yep. That was a tasting on this Saturday morning.
And it was, I think, it was on Saturday.
Yes, that's one of my forced smiles. I'm not very good with photos. I can't smile.
I actually found a photo of you, and I was in the back for some reason. So I don't know why I was there, but it was quite a surprise for myself.
Was it in a bar by any chance?
No. It was at Spirits in the Sky.
All right, okay. Yeah, so, I've been 3 or 4 times now. So it's a great festival as well, and we've got a great connection in Belgium. You know, Cadenheads have done really well over the years. The guys that we work with there, the Nectar, have done a fantastic job for us. So we always try and help. And we used to go to Spa as well, but obviously that's no longer. We went to Liège last year. That was the alternative one. This year I was on another trip, so I couldn't make this year's one. And normally go in sort of September time for a week or so to do tastings, but again, unfortunately, we've had to cancel that as well. But hopefully, when things start to clear up, we'll get back again for a visit and sort of travel around and do some tastings and sort of promote some of the new products.
Are you planning some new visits to whatever?
At the moment, you can't really do much planning. we're having to look at government guidelines, see how that country's doing. Spirits was just cancelled recently. There, we hadn't actually said at that point that we weren't going anywhere, so we're just still trying to play it as it goes. If I'm being honest, I doubt we'll be probably abroad anywhere in the near future.
I think for 6 months, yeah.
I'd be very surprised, but you never know. Things might change. We might get a vaccine. It might. This is going back to COVID now, but hopefully things will change soon. Yes, Benno. Thanks, Benno. Oh, you got to hunt down the kids. That's
this kid
always comes first. No, it's going to be, and I think everybody's going to be in the same position as well. You know, we had our festival that we had to cancel. You know, we actually had another festival in September that we usually have a Cadenhead sort of gathering, and again we had to cancel that too. But we've got a virtual one coming up, which will get announced pretty shortly, to try and do something a bit different, which everybody's been doing it as well. It's just that it's something to try and give people a chance to try some different drams as well.
Robert is asking, who have been the big influences on your journey?
Well, I think there've been, the whole company has been absolutely tremendous. I mean, our director of sales is Ronald Watson, who's been at Springbank for 15 years and who I've been a friend with for longer. You know, so it was probably him years ago. 'Cause as we're talking about earlier on, when I was younger, probably wasn't the biggest whiskey fan. Like when you're 15. But then in my kind of early 20s, you know, if you're at his house, he'd try this, you know, give it a chance. So you'd start to get into it, and you'd maybe start with, you know, it was he probably didn't know much about independent bottling as such, but he always had the knowledge of, you know, Springbank, Highland Park, you know, Bowmore, etc. So that kind of helped start it up. Obviously, some old colleagues used to work with Mark Watt as well. Donald, my old shop manager too, was always a big help. Frank McCarty, our old distillery manager, still used to do the whiskey school. One of the guys that used to work in the distillery, Paul, was a very big influence, showed me around. Gavin, there's a lot of guys that work there that take the time. If you show any kind of like encouragement or to be keen, they will look after you, and they'll try and show you guidance as well. So there's quite a lot of people. I wouldn't like just to single out one person, because there's a 5 to 10 people that have done a lot for me in that time. Yeah,
but is it not so? Because when you're working at a business side like yourself, aren't they afraid you'll be a competitive for them?
We all kind of do different roles, though. I think everybody tries to encourage everyone. You know, like for our team, I'd want nobody's. I'm not wanting somebody just to stay down because I want to keep my job. You know, I want progress for them. If they become better than me at my job, then that's fair enough. You know, they would deserve that. But I don't think it's not a kind of business like that.
No,
like, the company's not like that. It's not a case of it's not cutthroat. Okay. We're a pretty close team. You know, even like the Cadenhead team, even with the Springbank guys, sometimes. But we're pretty close. It's not a. At least I hope so. Maybe I'm getting wrong here, but nobody's trying to. You know, it's not a case of I'm not going to teach him anything. Everyone is very encouraging, actually, at teaching people for progression.
Yeah,
it can only help the company.
Everybody wants to evolve.
Yeah,
evolve. Sorry.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Chris is asking, what are the plans for other spirits you're doing? Cognac, Cachaca, rum. Anything new coming?
There will be a new rum release coming very shortly as well. At the moment, because of we're still trying to get back on. We will have other alternative, you know, spirits as well. Like maybe the cognac, Armagnac might come in the future again. But right now, it's just the rum release will probably come out in the next 2 months or so. So Chris is a club member; he'll get to find that out first. So if anybody else is looking for it, if they're club members or if you're not in the club, it's a good time to join too. But we will be doing other things in the future. But right now, our plans have just been set back a bit, so we need to kind of concentrate on certain releases before the end of the year.
Yeah, Robert is agreeing with you.
Yep, thanks, Robert. It was actually when you mentioned it there, it was quite strange because it's something I've never really thought about. Because of that, it was like, Christ, but I've worked in other places where I have seen that, but not here. No.
Okay, it's not all about the money. Mostly it's about money when people are doing such things. So
you get rewarded a lot. You know, the company does look after the staff. It has always been. It's not a case of, you know, we get rewarded. I mean, like at Christmas time, we all get a bottle. You know, a special bottle. It's a one-off that and we also get other bottles. You know, they're very good at like giving out like higher wages than other places. You know, we try and go above. So it's a very, very good place to work. So, it's always about trying. Well, if you've got happy staff,
okay,
it's going to help the workplace.
So did you get a bottle each week when you were in lockdown?
Not each week, unfortunately. The special bottle you only get once a year, unfortunately, because it's basically a one-off bottling of all the staff get one.
Yeah.
I think we'd be running out of stock if we got one for each week. It would be very nice though, but I think the company might be in some turmoil.
But you would be very happy.
I'd be more than happy.
Last week we had a visit from
Krian and Steph there.
Yeah, and Steph from Kluisner. And they sent me some photos, and I would really love to hear you talking about it.
I thought that would be the one. Yeah, it looks a bit dodgy. Well, the guys came to visit a few years ago, and we're doing some cask sampling. Now, we're meant to do it in the boardroom above our shop. This was a Monday morning, and we met the guys on the Sunday night. So I had these sample bottles in my office. And there was about 60, 70 bottles, so there was a lot of samples to take. So I took them up to the boardroom, and I put them on the table. And I realised the table had just been painted that morning. I had no idea it was getting painted. There was no sign, so I picked it back up again, just automatically. I was like, oh no. So I've got paint all over my suit. The guys were, there was about 15 or 16 of them coming to visit us within like 10 minutes. I've got paint all over my hands. I've got a very heavy box of samples. I've got nowhere to take them. So that's why we ended up in the warehouse. It turns out there was a few benches that were being stored in one of the warehouses. So it was always quite good to, we managed to get in there, and it actually turned out pretty good. Although I ruined a suit for it. But
throw it away.
It was a really good day though. It was. Apart from that, it was worth ruining a suit for.
Okay, another picture they sent me is this one. I have no idea what you were doing there.
That's in the Springbank distillery there, at the malt bins. So the sign you're seeing there, that's a Springbank supercomputer. So basically there's 10 malt bins there. And if it's full, they'll tick it full. If it's empty, they'll tick it empty. And if it's half full, there's a glitch there because it's half full and it's empty. So there must be a virus in the computer. But the hammer is basically when they're emptying the bins into the auger, it's basically the corkscrew system. They tap the bins. So this is one of the oldest giant hammers in the world. It's kind of like Mjolnir. It's like Thor's hammer. So one of the guys got a photo with me, and it's sort of stuck ever since, that one. But it's a really good hammer. I don't know how old it is, but it
works.
It's pretty effective.
Robert is sending team effort on the product and company on first class. Some cars are making more money than what Cadenheads are bottling them for. My cupboards are full of great value.
Thank you very much, Robert. That's very kind of you.
What's your idea about that? You're selling a bottle of whiskey and knowing it will be a lot more worth more money in the near future.
It's difficult, you know. It's with the likes of, I said, the closed distilleries. I mean, you just can't replace them, and some of the bigger names as well. I mean, prices, well, obviously, you know, you can see as time goes on with everyone, but we try and keep it at a fair price. You know, you could easily charge twice, 3 times as much, and still sell it, but you've still got to try and make it fair. You know, as long as we can make you've got to do sort of market value, but don't take the mick out of people.
Yeah.
You know, because if you're selling, if you're taking the mick out of that, you know, you've got loyal customers who are buying the ones they're also buying maybe the less expensive, the ones who don't get as much value. You know, and they help promote the company as well. So it's trying to find that fine balance. There's Martin.
Martin wants to know something about a mezcal with a very sexy label.
It's
now I want to know.
You might be waiting a while, Martin. we did have plans for that, but we had basically done a deal about 2.5 years ago, but it's kind of went off the grid slightly with the contact in Mexico and here. Because the bottling had to be done in Mexico for it to be called mezcal. Otherwise, we'd have to call it an agave-based spirit here. You know, so we wanted to call it mezcal, and there's been a bit of back and forth. So at the moment, I wouldn't expect it in the near future anyway.
Okay. You mentioned it before in the beginning of the show. There's a lot of deaths involved at Cadenhead. And then I found this one.
Yeah. Hey.
I loved it.
We done a few tastings last year at our Cadenheads in the Courtyard date, and we did different warehouse tastings throughout the day. So we decided to do a kind of theme with each one of them. So we did, tastings during the day. So we had sort of themes behind them. Like we had a rum one. It was the Rumming Man, as in the old Arnold Schwarzenegger film, The Running Man. So we'd photoshopped, I think, Mitch and Jenna. We had Mark in The French Connection, and myself as Freddy Krueger. So it was just a kind of film theme. I'll be honest with you, it didn't really make any sense, but it gave us a laugh. So we thought, why not? Let's just have a bit of fun with the tasting names.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about Mark, I presume you miss him, because
well, he's starting up his own business now as well. Yeah, so it's a bit exciting times for them too just now.
He's doing well.
Yeah, and he did the new child as well there. So it's very exciting times. So it's I think their new bottling's coming out quite soon. I seen a post a few days ago. So they've got, I think, 5 new releases coming up. So
yeah, and a lot of what buds.
What's that? Sorry.
And a lot of what buds t-shirts.
Yes, yeah, I've seen a lot of the Buds t-shirts on Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's,
do you have one yourself?
What's that? I actually don't. No, I don't have one. You put me in the spot there.
No, I have one. I haven't got one either, so no problem. So Cameron, I want to thank you very much for joining us this show, and I hope you didn't regret it.
Thank you very much, Gunther.
Next week we had a guest. It was a big guest, but unfortunately he's a bit sick, so he can't join us next week. So he will be on the 31st. Sorry, it's Martin from Highland Park, so he's sick. If anybody has a suggestion for being our guest next week, please let me know. I'm looking forward. So otherwise, I have a week off. It's a good thing. Kevin, I will go on the back, and you have the last word for saying hello to the viewers. So, okay.
I was trying to get to the end of that without this being mentioned. But,
yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
I have another question. I see. Cameron, how old are you? And what's your golf handicap to Peter Pan of the... No idea what that's about.
I'm 36 years old, and my handicap is pretty much the same.
So everybody's saying hello now. So I will be.
Thanks very much, every guy. Thanks, guys. But hey,
Yeah.
thanks very much, Gunther. I appreciate you taking the time. And
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I will see you in the back, so you have the last word. Okay.
perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate that. Hopefully, everything will actually get a bit better soon with the COVID situation, and we'll get a bit of travelling in the near future. So, thank you, and slange.